Before starting this course and the journey to becoming culturally competent, I had always been fairly confident in my knowledge of different cultures and peoples of today's world, including their history, their struggles, and most importantly, how to effectively communicate and work with people from all walks of life. I will be honest and admit that I was proved wrong and surprised more than once. If anything, I have learned and experienced throughout this semester things that have given me more of a scope on being culturally aware, as well as humbled me quite a bit. For my self-assessment pretest, I scored a 108, which put me in the level 3 range. Although I will be honest and say that I expected to score in the 4 range, I think that this score was pretty much a confidence booster. Understanding of the content came with relative ease, and many of the vocabulary and themes were familiar. I was greatly disappointed at my scores in cultural diversity. At 198 in the level 2 range, I definitely realized I had much to learn about different cultures. I atone this to my upbringing and my childhood environment. I grew up in the South, in a small town that was predominantly populated by African and Caucasian Americans. It made me realize how comfortable I had become my entire life just being around one and sometimes two groups of people. I realized immediately that I am not intimately connected with anyone that really isn't African American or Caucasian American. Seeing these scores definitely drove me to want to branch out and learn about other cultures. I was born in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, which is a small rural town in the southwestern corner of the state. It's never really been known for much. Hopkinsville is just as simple and as relatively quiet then as it is now. It only really gains notoriety for its agriculture. Hopkinsville is known for its rich tobacco fields, corn, and wheat production. And many of the inhabitants on the outskirts of the main city own farmland and produce their own food. I had the privilege of having a 2-parent middle-class household, which was uncommon for most African American children in Hopkinsville who lived in predominantly lower-class 1-parent households. They were known for being hardworking and respectable people, my parents, and they both instilled in me many important values such as the importance of fairness, respect, being culturally aware, and being open-minded. I would say the most influential person that has made me who I am today is my mother, who was a social worker of 20 plus years and an active member of the local NAACP chapter. She taught me much about oppression and its societal, economical, and personal effects. I grew up relatively estranged from most black students as I was always a part of advanced programs, was very studious, and was into unconventional things that weren't a part of mainstream black culture in Hopkinsville or probably anywhere in the U.S. for that matter. I quickly picked up code switching skills so that I could survive, so to speak, in both my classroom environment and my social environment. I decided to focus most of my cultural immersions with the group of people that I've chose to work with in my profession, which is the LGBTQIA community. I first went to the Gay Pride Parade in Atlanta of 2015. When I went there, it was just such a breath of fresh air. I saw so much love and love for oneself and being who you are and being accepting of others. It was such an overwhelming experience. I just remember all of the vivid and well-constructed costumes that a lot of the people that went in the parade wore. And I just remember seeing how happy everyone was. I remember seeing just the liveliness and just that feeling of proclaiming to the world who you are and where you stand and what power you have and being in the LGBTQI community or as being an ally. And it was a really great experience. My second cultural immersion was me being an apprentice at a tattoo shop. Now, of course, it did not start as being a cultural immersion. I started this to be a career. And even though it unfortunately didn't work out in my favor, I will say that it was an experience like no other that I've ever had. Working in a tattoo shop and being around the tattoo culture, I learned so much about real passion and being exposed to real artists who have such a strong desire to create and to create things that are impactful and that create a lasting memory for people. And I learned a lot about being extremely clean, as hygiene is a very important factor within a tattoo shop and when tattooing. I also learned a lot about flow and lines and how everything has what's known as an S curve, which I will tell you to this day I still cannot get. And one of the artists told me that I was stiff and that I really needed to learn the S curve so that I could get flow in my art and in my life. My third cultural immersion was an interview with Rudon Bastian, who was a native of Nassau, Bahamas. He spoke to me a lot about stereotypes and when he exposes his country of origin to people, and many people think that they live in huts or they all smoke marijuana and that they swing in trees. He also spoke to me a lot about growing up poor in a single-family household and a parent who had little education. He said that most of the islands, this was something that was normal, and he grew up with financial challenges. He and his friends would go for cruise ships for tourists, and they would entertain them so that they could get money for things that they needed and food. My fourth and final cultural immersion was an interview with Shad Santiago, an author, socialite, radio personality, and host here in Atlanta, and a member of the LGBTQIA community. He talked to me a lot about the daily stereotypes that he encounters. He says that as a gay man, everybody has all these assumptions about his personality and about the things that he's interested in. He says that many people think that all gay people are super promiscuous and that they all know each other and that they've all been with each other. And he talks about how frustrating that is, especially when it comes to dating. His coming out experience was unique. He told me that he really didn't come out. He felt that it wasn't necessary. He spoke about how a lot of people act like being gay is very foreign and it's something that has to be discussed, and he personally felt that it's not. He had such a strong personality, and he was so adamant about being who he was and about being a powerful and impassioned person. He said that he never really experienced any discrimination in the workplace or really anywhere else, and he said it was because of his personality. He just has a winning charisma about himself. Throughout our readings, research, and cultural immersions, I have learned much about many different groups of people and cultures, as well as the struggles they face, the forces of oppression and discrimination, and the social work code of ethics. With the skills learned throughout life and this first introduction to the social work program, I plan to make it a point to immerse myself into more culturally diverse groups. I would also like to begin volunteering at shelters or community outreach services to bring myself closer with disadvantaged people and learn how to address their needs. My post-test scores were both excellent this time, as I scored a 131 on the self-assessment test, which put me in the level 4, and a score of 252 on the cultural competency post-test, which scored me in the level 3. I am much more confident in my knowledge of other cultural groups, as well as my knowledge of social work as a whole. I particularly have become interested in learning more about the First Nations and European Americans communities, as they are still contributing to my lower levels of competency. I can only hope that some of the same fire that my mother instilled in me will drive me to be an outstanding LCSW and well-rounded individual.